Let's kick off this morning UAE time, but of course late at night in the United States with Raad Alkadiri, managing partner of 31032 Associates, to get some sense as to the seriousness of these decisions that Donald Trump has made and the US government has made regarding tightening the noose of sanctions around Russia's oil flows, sanctioning its biggest oil companies. Rad, is this time going to be different? We're finally serious about stopping Russian oil flows. Your thoughts?
I think there is this. I mean, taken at face value, this is a serious move. In the United States, and under the Biden administration, under the Trump administration, has thus far tried to find any measure possible that didn't actually target Russian crude flows directly. So it was price caps, it was, shadow fleets, etc., but nothing that went after the production. In this case, it is going directly after the production, and that is a serious move. And I think that's what you're seeing the market reaction to. And the market has to judge now, how much oil may actually come off the market as a result of this. 55% of Russian production is controlled by these two companies. Where the rubber will hit the road is on the implementation. So are we going to see tough implementation by US authorities of these sanctions? Are they going to follow through with tough measures? Or is it designed more as a warning, which Trump himself seemed to allude to, that they might not be on for long, expecting that there would be a Russian reaction. I mean, that's, I think, where you're seeing the sort of market holding its breath at the moment. Initial reaction to the news, and now waiting to hear what the physical impact really is going to be. But that will come down to the US implementation more than anything else.
And that's the key, isn't it, Rad? I mean, I would just follow up. If you're to buy into the seriousness of this moment, you also have to buy into the long-held 10-year narrative that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin were somehow connected on the hip through some bromance unknown to all us mere mortals. Do you have to buy into it? The market seems to be buying into that maybe this bromance is over, or are these two separate things, do you think?
Like, I think the issue of the bromance has been sort of partly speculative. I mean, clearly
I mean, a
Trump,
red carpet in
Trump,
Alaska, it was
no,
all
no, but
pretty dramatic stuff. I mean, God, guy's up for being to be arrested in the International Criminal Court. Trump's giving him a red
absolutely.
carpet in Alaska. That's a bromance. Come on.
Well, that was the bit I was going to add is, there's clearly some substance to it in terms of, Trump having sort of gone easy on Putin in many ways, certainly the US, but not just Trump. Biden was there as well in terms of taking easier measures, softer measures towards Russia, particularly when it came to oil markets. I do think what you're seeing is the mercurial and very personal nature of decision making in this administration. If you want one really good example of the imperial presidency, this is it, and how unsettling it can be for markets and how disruptive it can be for markets. This is an administration that can turn on a dime on the basis of presidential whim. Trump wants to be seen as the man who ends the war and ends it on his terms. It's not going to be on Ukraine's terms, and it probably won't be on Russia's terms either. But it's also part of this cart before the horse strategy that sort of creates ripple effects and disruptions afterwards. What you see is the president announcing victory, and then all of the bits that amount to what would be the victory have to be worked out later. You're seeing that in Gaza as well. So I think what it really gives you an idea of is not so much whether the bromance is over, but just how unpredictable US policy is, particularly when one man can change it on the basis of whim.
Rad, just picking up on that. I mean, ultimately, again, you buy in or not buy into the Trump Putin divorce. The other thing one would have to buy into, which is also being a bridge from Biden administration to the Trump administration, and that is every American president loves a low price of gasoline at the pump. It's a big deal for you Americans driving around in your ginormous cars. But where are we with that? Does Trump have wiggle room here to see the price of oil elevate, to hold the line, as you said, maybe that they're hoping the Russians will react and this will be a short-lived thing, or God forbid you get what you ask for and half of Russian oil is shut in. I mean, GD Mackers, you'll be paying $10 at the pump there before you know it.
I think at this moment in time there is wiggle room. If you look at the latest data in terms of average gasoline prices, they're under $3 a gallon, and it's the lowest for about 4 years. And I think there is
The gift
also,
from Riyadh keeps on giving, is that it?
and I think that's the second thing, yes, that there is a sense at this moment in time that markets are well stocked, that global inventories are rising. There's some big numbers in terms of oil at sea. And I think that combination of things gives a certain amount of succor to policymakers in Washington that there is room for maneuver. And again, as I said before, you have wiggle room on the backside. It's not even a case of losing face and stepping down. It's a case of how seriously these sanctions are implemented. And as Osama mentioned, the secondary sanctions being key. That's the sanction that's going to worry most buyers of Russian crude. It is the risk of secondary sanctions, the risk of being blocked out of dollar markets and dollar transactions. If the US were to go after that strongly and to sort of really be robust in its pursuit, I think that's your canary in the coal mine. As an indicator of how far this administration is willing to go on this. But for the time being, I think there is a belief that OPEC supply is sufficient and may grow, and inventories will tide them over for a wee bit at least.
If one sort of follows through who are the winners here? I mean, this is, as you mentioned, a significant amount of Russian production, Russian exports. A lot of that exports have been finding well, all of them nearly finding their home in Asia. If they were to be, for this to succeed, who can win? Can the U.S. oil producers win? Is there excess U.S. oil exports waiting to rush into Asia to fill the gap that Russia would leave behind? Who are the winners here, do you think, from the market point of view?
It all goes back to the case of how seriously is this going to be implemented? So who are the winners here? I think is partly what you're seeing in terms of the oil market taking a breath.
Well, in America First universe, is Trump thinking, "Oh, great, I'm going to give a big win to Chevron and Exxon here"? Or
I don't think the thinking is that sophisticated. I think this is a knee-jerk reaction. It's something that's been building for a while. Obviously, the Europeans have been pushing for it for a while and have taken their own measures. There's been coordination between the two sides. But I think it goes back to this issue of, you've seen the headline. Now, what is the substance? And that substance is going to determine the winners and losers. I mean, the losers obviously are going to be Russia in one sense, and just simply, even if it can continue to sort of export, it's going to have to do so at a bigger discount. So it gets hit, and it's hard to see that if this sanctions regime is followed through, that you don't suddenly get some impact on Russian crude and reductions in exports, reductions in production. I think, from a Chinese India perspective, are they going to be winners? Is this going to be cheaper Russian crude? That will depend again on how serious the US is about implementation and whether that's targeted. But they also sort of have to consider diversification of crude. I think some of the big winners out of this will be the Middle East producers, who can sort of naturally step in and fill some of these markets and who are very keen to sort of expand their footprint even further in Asia. That's where they see their long-term, destiny lying. And fundamentally, those are the markets that they want to sort of ensure continue to take their crude. So, you may see yet another redistribution of flows taking place. The question then becomes, where does that excess Russian production, excess Russian exports go? And it's not clear that it has a home right now. And that in itself could sort of provide the disruption that I think the markets are signaling.
Raad, just to wrap up back to where we started and kind of get inside the baseball a little bit of this decision to ramp up the sanctions from Washington on Russia and on the targeted Russian oil companies. You had mentioned in your commentary earlier the imperial presidency, of which we are all very familiar with. But my uh, point or my sort of pitch for your consideration is that this move on Russia is actually a signal of the opposite. That indeed this is the because this move is very much in alignment with the Senate, the wider Republican Party of the Senate, who have been advocating, Lindsey Graham being the sort of exhibit A character, that the more robust sanctions be imposed on Russia. And they've had this, whatever mass majority, or forget, super majority, I think they call it, in the Senate, ready to go on this deal. So I just wanted to get your thoughts a little bit on inside baseball there in US politics, but that this is the opposite of imperial presidency reasserting itself from a wider political base.
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive in terms of the imperial presidency and, how the Senate feels about this. It's been, Republicans traditionally have been hardline on Russia, with some
I
exceptions,
mention it because
obviously.
I think it gives
No,
it a
no,
bit more
absolutely. But I think,
velocity, that
yeah,
it's
no,
not
and I
just a
think,
whim
and I think
Trump
where it
thing.
comes down to is, what drove the decision and where do we go next?
Yeah.
Um, that there is a strong bipartisan feeling that there should be tougher measures against Russia has absolutely been there for some time, and that has sort of increased. Thus far, that's done absolutely nothing to sway the administration and to sway Donald Trump in terms of his policymaking. You mentioned the bromance. I mean, that happened on U.S. soil, in Alaska. So I think what you're seeing, and where I say the two aren't mutually exclusive, is yeah, absolutely. Trump can bend to the to the calls, or at least to be seen to be bending to the calls of the Republican Party, the wider Republican Party, and an effort to take a tougher line in terms of Russia. Will that actually manifest itself? And what is the decision-making process that ultimately leads to that change? But again, this isn't, this is the president imposing sanctions. This is, again, very much an imperial move, despite the fact that the Senate has been ready probably to sort of take stronger measures and actually sort of pass sanctions legislation of its own. So again, the Senate gets to have its way when Donald wants them to, and I think that's where you go back to the imperial presidency. And Russia may test that my thesis, but I suspect that the president will want to ensure that he is in the driver's seat, and that the rest of the party and the other parts of government follow him, not the other way around.